Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. My name is Joe Sellepack. I'm your host today for Encounter. And today is Valentine's Day, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to really tell someone that you love them. And one of the ways that we can say that we love our loved one is by actually taking care of ourselves. As we get older, and as we know throughout the United States, we are, as men and women, we are living longer lives. And sometimes when we get to be older, especially as we age, the person that we love becomes our caregiver in many different ways. And by taking care of ourselves, we help reduce injury for the person that is caring for us. We also help reduce injury for ourselves and be able to live a much longer life. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what the importance of exercise and diet, nutrition, and that kind of thing as we get older. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I feel that one of the best things you can do for someone that you love is to help them and give them, whatever they need. And there's no better gift to give someone than the gift of health or better health and create a healthier lifestyle. So it's important to lead by example. And when we can lead by example and create a healthy lifestyle for ourselves, it becomes reflective of our families as well.
It really does. And one of the things that happens a lot with when mobility in a couple, especially as a couple gets older, husband, wife, if the wife becomes the caregiver for the husband, the wife is usually a lot lighter and a number of things that are part of that, and she ends up having to help somebody down the steps who's probably bigger than her, and she ends up getting injured in the process of just trying to get the person inside of the car. So caregiving itself can be a hazardous thing, and if you can keep yourself healthy for a longer period of time, it helps your loved one out too, right? In that kind of a way.
It absolutely does. And one of the biggest things that unfortunately happens when we get older is we ended up putting on excess weight that we don't want to have anymore. So as we get older, not only is it important to maintain a healthy lifestyle to kind of keep the weight off, but also keep our strength up as well, because you brought up a great example that if you need to help somebody down the road, it's important to not only be strong enough to care for yourself, but to care for them as well.
And my guest today is Derek Stupski. He's the owner of Stupski Fitness over on Clinton Street. Welcome to Encounter, Derek.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
So what kind of background do you have?
Well, I'm a Binghamton native. I graduated from Shenango Valley, and I went on to play baseball at Long Island University, where I studied exercise science. I completed my degree and went on to become a general manager of a personal training studio on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, as well as an intern with the Newark Bears professional baseball team. So I had the ability at a young age to work with professional athletes and then also work with the everyday people as well.
And now everyday people are, they don't view themselves as being athletes, but in a certain way, I mean, they all have to be concerned about certain things, right?
Well, sure, absolutely. And like I said, I had an ability to work with professional athletes and guys that were able to play Major League Baseball, and I ended up falling in love with the aspect of working with the everyday people. And you mentioned not only are they think of themselves possibly as athletes, but if we can shape our training to be more geared towards them, just like we do for the athletes, that's when we can start to build a functional and more healthy lifestyle. And
functional is an important word in that, right?
Absolutely, and I think functional is one of the most overused terms, to be honest with you, in the health and fitness industry, because everybody thinks that functional training is just going out and doing bicep curls or doing sit-ups, when really it's not. Functional training is the biggest aspect, if you do it right, towards making someone healthy and limit the risk of injury. So if we can mimic lifestyle movements, everyday movements that they do, such as carrying groceries then from the house, or putting food away on the top shelf, or walking up the stairs, or the example we just gave of caregiving to somebody else, that's when we can make their life easier and make the lives of others around them improved as well.
Yeah, because it's interesting that as we get older, the mobility or the ability to actually lift your hands over your head or bend or other kinds of things actually becomes more of a problem. And in those kind of situations where arthritis is setting in, how important is it to really strengthen the muscles around the joints and that kind of thing?
Well, sure, and there's the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's not 100% true, but over time, if we don't use those particular movement patterns that we're talking about, going overhead and bending and squatting over, it becomes more difficult over time and we end up losing that mobility. So what we want to try to do, what we try to really specialize in at Stupski Fitness is to build up the movement patterns to make it more efficient. And the greatest example I can give you is if you were to watch a young child or a toddler run around and they need to pick up a ball or they want to throw their ball or they want to reach for something, they move so fluid and they don't have to really worry about if their back is neutral or if they're making sure that their hands are in the right position to go overhead and all of that. So if we can kind of emulate, don't lose your inner child, if you will. We're able to emulate those movements and bring them back to you because they're there. They're instinctual, they're primal movement patterns, just that we don't use them all the time, so we end up losing them. So it's important to kind of tap back into that again and get those patterns more efficient. Yeah,
one of my favorite pictures of my children is on the back deck of my house, and they're both at a year and a half or 2 years. One's two and a half. The other one's a year and a half old, and they're standing there on they're actually squatting on the back porch, and they have this big old grin on their face, and they're shucking corn, and they're doing it for hours because we had a big party going on at the house at the time, but they were able to sit there. They had that ability to do that. That as an adult, I'm like looking at it going, man, how do they do that? That's kind of weird. But
well, it's just like any other skill that you want to acquire. You want to become a good rider. You want to become a good athlete. You want to become very good at presenting. It's something that's a skill that you have to practice time and time again. And when you stop practicing that skill, unfortunately, not everything in life is like riding a bike.
Right.
So we have to kind of get back up and get our movements going again, and we slowly improve over time and make sure that we can become more efficient. So, to be a young kid and be able to move around that way is easy, but unfortunately, when they go to school, they sit for most of the time. And as we transition to adulthood, a lot of adults have desk jobs or they're sitting all the time. And because we're such creatures of habit, the more we sit, the more likely we are to sit, the more likely we are to make bad choices. So it's important to kind of keep that, like I said, that inner child alive with you, and that's going to truly help improve your health overall.
So as we age, there are different goals that might go along with different decades of our life, so to speak. I hate to generalize in that kind of a way,
Sure.
but we all are different in some ways. But can you break it down for us? Like, what are some of the goals that a person might be able to set for themselves as they get older in terms of fitness?
Sure. Well, we can clearly look at the teenagers in the mid-20s, possibly even the early 30s, where most people exercise because, yes, they want to improve their health and they want to feel a bit better, but in the general sense, it's more about looking good. That's what they're truly worried about. Then as we continue to age and get older, that's when we talked about the functional training, where it becomes more and more important to actually think about, at the age of 50, 55 plus, is it really important to see how much I can bench press, or is it more important to see how well I can move and how efficient I can move? Because one of the biggest goals, I think, of a lot of people that have kids or grandkids is to be able to enjoy the time with them and not have to be sitting on the couch the entire time while their grandkids run around. You want to be able to go out and play with the grandkids and throw the ball around, lift them up, pick them up, and have a good time. So unfortunately, we have to almost change our mindset. Yes, it's still about looking good, but we transition to more feeling good and making sure that our body is symmetrical and we're able to move properly so we can enjoy life and be more functional, like we talked about.
And because some of those movements, like if you're thinking about picking up your grandchild, there are lots of little muscles that go into actually picking up a child rather than just the big muscles that you tend to work on when you're in your 20s, right?
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
So there's some stability that's a part of that, and there's other kinds of things that come into play when you're doing that in order for you to do it safely, right?
Right. So if we break down a pattern, for the example of picking up a child, There's so many things that go into place. You talked about the stability. We need stability so we're not falling over. You need the mobility to make sure that we can get ourselves in the right position. One of the biggest phrases that you hear a lot of is lift with your legs and not your back. And I think a lot of people misunderstand exactly what that means. And at Stupski Fitness, we try to teach what the proper movement pattern is to be able to pick things up safely and properly without putting ourselves in jeopardy of injury.
Right, and things like rotator cuffs and other kinds of things that you're not really worried about too much when you're in your 20s, though you should.
Right.
I know you tore your rotator cuff when you were in college. I tore mine playing softball in my 40s, so I empathize a lot with that. But things like that are really important, and you just don't realize until it's gone that it's a problem, right?
And you bring up such a good point, because when we're in our teens and in our 20s, we're always worried about the big muscle groups and how we look and how our clothes are going to fit and how we look when we go to the beach and all of that. And it's a great point that we have so much more finer muscles and finer movements of the body that we don't truly realize or appreciate at the time when we're younger. Shoulders and hips and knees and ankles, they're all delicate areas that we have to take care of. The sooner the better. We don't want to have to feel like we have to make up for lost time.
Well, so even if you're thinking about entering into an exercise program and you're in your 20s, you should be thinking about full health even at that age, right?
Well, and absolutely. And before, no matter how old or how young someone is when they start with us, we like to try to get clearance from their physician or a doctor that can give them some guidance, because sometimes there's some underlying health issues that they don't know about, which means in turn that we won't know about. So before we really start any kind of exercise programming, we make sure that we get all clear on the health end. And if there's any kind of ailments or things that we need to know about, we need to know those up front, because we can modify the exercises around those particular ailments to make sure you still get the full effect of it.
Now, my guest today is Derek Stupski. He's with Stupski Fitness on Clinton Street. He's the owner and the operator of that. Derek, if one of our radio listeners would want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Sure. Well, there's two easy ways you can do it. You can either call us directly at the gym at 607-203-1774, or you can email us at stupskifitness@gmail.com. Stupski is Stupski.
Well, thank you. And so, as we're talking about as we age, how important exercise is, and mobility and that kind of thing. We've talked a little bit about some of the movements that people need to concentrate on. I remember this one CrossFit meme that I get on Facebook on occasions, and it says, what are some of the movements that you can do at home in order for you to maintain functional stability throughout your life? Sure. And they talk about lunges and squats and other kinds of things like that. What would you recommend for people to do?
Well, one of the biggest things that I talk about a lot at Stupski Fitness at the gym is the functional movement patterns, or the primal movement patterns. We mentioned, we gave the example of watching your kids run around when they were younger. And when we can do a particular movement, like a squat, like a lunge, like bending over, we have to think of how practical is it in our life to do. So that's number one. Is it really important to see how much we can pick up, or is it more important to make sure that picking up things or that movement is efficient? And also, one thing I highly recommend people do is they make complementary movements. So if you're going to do a push, make sure we do a pull as well. That's going to help keep the body symmetrical. In terms of being able to work out at home and do things on your own, I have to say one of the most overrated exercise, believe it or not, are sit-ups. Because when we put our spine in any kind of flexion and we're coming down and up, we put a lot of stress on our back that way, especially if we're not doing the exercise correctly. So what I tell people to do is think about the children once again, what are our natural movement patterns, and we can do things like push-ups and the lunges and squats at home, and using